Our next performer can be heard several times every week, telling stories on KYCY Radio in San Francisco. He has appeared on A&E's Comedy on the Road and Fox TV's Comedy Express. Please welcome the winner of the 2005 Stanley Drama Award for Playwriting, Dylan Brody.
I cannot possibly do my regular political stand-up comedy this evening. Well, sadly, I am incapable of speaking of George W. Bush without cursing a lot. Instead, this evening I'll be performing for you the story of the world's stupidest mugging of which I was a victim some 20 years ago. I was 21 years old. I was in New York City. I was farther north on the island of Manhattan than any 21-year-old middle-class white guy has any right to be as it's nearing midnight. It was January. I was waiting for a bus. My breath steamed in the night air as I sat on the bench. A large African-American man came out of the building behind me and sat down. It was the early 80s, so he was still a big black guy. He sat down next to me and we waited for the bus together with our breath steaming in the night air. And it looked like he wanted to say something to me. He couldn't quite work up the courage. I feel everybody can use a little encouragement. I said, "Are you all right, sir?" And he said, "Give me all your money." I said, "What?" And he said, "I'm mugging you. Give me all your money." And I said, "Well, do you have a knife or something?" And he said, "I could go inside and get a knife if you want." I didn't want that. So I gave him the $6 that I had in my pocket. And we sat together on the bench with our breath steaming in the night air until I realized there was a problem. And I said, "Well, now I can't get on the bus." And he said, "Oh, sorry," and handed back $1, which was, at the time, the cost of a bus ride in Manhattan. And I said, "Thank you," to my mugger. And we sat together on the bench with our breath steaming in the night air until the bus came. And I moved to get on the bus. And I thought about saying to the bus driver, "This guy just mugged me." But by now it was $5, so it felt less like reporting a crime than telling on a guy. So I paid my $1 and I got on the bus, and he got on the bus behind me and paid his $1 and sat down a few seats behind me. And after a few blocks, he tapped me on the shoulder and startled me. And he held out $2. And he said, "Why don't you take half of this money back? You always want to have some cash on you." And I took the $2. And again, I said, "Thank you," to my mugger. And after another couple of blocks, he rang the bell to get off the bus. And as he was moving to get off the bus, he stopped by again, and he held out the last $2 and said, "You know, I really just needed bus fare. Why don't you take the rest of this back?" And it occurred to me for the first time that we live in this bizarre society where it's less embarrassing to be a criminal than a little short on cash. But by now I felt like I had bonded with my mugger. So I pushed it back into his hand and I said, "Why don't you hang on to that? You really always want to have some cash on you." And my mugger said, "Thank you," and got off the bus. And apparently the bus driver caught the last of this exchange in the rearview mirror, because as we pulled away, he said, "You know, you really shouldn't give them people money. It only encourages them." Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for giving me my 3 minutes of fame. I still got 12 coming to me somewhere else.